Hello everyone. We are going to continue with the module Introduction to Ethical Living, Professional Integrity. So what we had talked in the lesson 4.3 was that we had talked about professional competence with character, that how we need to become professionally competent, including all the moral values that we are supposed to have, all the ethical values that they're supposed to have, how they work together in tandem to make us a complete person so that the goals that we set for ourselves are easily and tangibly achievable. When we set goals which are tangibly achievable, that gives us a lot of satisfaction, gives us a lot of happiness. It continues to give us a lot of prosperity. So it is a wholesome deal that we are looking at. Just when we go to the market to buy something and we would like to pick up a hamper which is more in the value for less. So now continuing with the same topic, what we do now is corruption, conflict of interest, and workplace responsibility. So this lesson also is divided in two parts. We will now begin to learn and delve into how best can we handle, or what does it mean, or what are the consequences of each thing that is enlisted, be it corruption, be it conflict of interest, and workplace responsibility. Let's delve into the concept of corruption, conflict of interest, and workplace responsibility, and how they intertwine in the professional sphere. Now, all of these do affect our professional life and do make a difference in how we work, how our connections become, and what eventually happens when we work in tandem, or when we consciously make an effort to do good work. Okay, so we'll talk about corruption first. Let's take a look into the basic definition of corruption. What does it mean and how does it matter? So, corruption in a workplace context generally refers to the abuse of entrusted power for private gain. So, when we are working at a place, the position that we are in, there are certain powers that are come associated to the chair where we sit on, or the work that we are doing. No work can be done without having any kind of framework. It will have some kind of a binding effect, like every job has a key responsibility area. So when we have a key responsibility area, everything that is attached to it is kind of entrusted to it. So it is for us to decide, it is for us to discern how well we are going to execute our work, how well are we going to attempt what is given to us, and how well are we going to do justice to it and not abuse it. Abuse would mean that misusing it. So some people do, we as humans have the tendency to misuse the powers which have been given to us. So how well we mindfully not do that. It involves dishonest or fraudulent conduct by those in a position of authority, often for personal benefit or to the benefit of a third party. Now, it involves a lot of dishonest thoughts come to our mind, a lot of fraudulent ways can be there for monetary gain, for any kind of private gain. Again, we are human beings and we tend to slip sometimes. So when we see that, oh, that company is going to give me a little more than what I am already earning, we may just indulge in a little bit of fraudulent gain so that we get monetarily blessed. But then it doesn't go a very long way. It has to cut short sometime, and sometime, like how a cat comes out of the box, sometimes it just might fire back by somebody letting into gossiping, or someone with whom you have associated with sharing information, sharing papers, etc. They may just come back and say, oh, that person did such and such thing, why don't you also indulge into it? So that way, I mean, you need to carry on a good image for yourself and not indulge in every small opportunity that you get, like to be dishonest, to be fraudulent, and conduct yourself in a righteously manner. So dishonesty also doesn't take you a very long way. It makes it shorter, and it always keeps playing on your mind like a burden. It plays heavy on your mind because there's something which is called conscience in us. It may not have allowed you to do it then, or it may have poked you a little, but then we kind of ignore it. So when we ignore it, it does keep at the back of your mind, and it does keep coming forward as and when that particular work comes to you, or that particular person comes to meet you. So let's quickly see what are the key characters if somebody indulges in corruption. So the first is abuse of power. Like we already said that every position that we are given, every chair that we are sitting in, carries the key responsibility area. So the key responsibility area gives you a lot of power which is associated with the chair, and you can abuse the power which has been given to you by not following the key responsibility areas, or by overstepping onto someone else who is your subordinate, or by lying, or by there's so many things, by sharing information which should not have been shared. So all of that, there are so many documentations which we are supposed to handle when we are sitting in a position. So those documentations could be confidential to the organization, to the company, to a person, and we delve into sharing those documents for someone else's benefit, for our benefit, so that it is a mutual give and take, so that we benefit. So that is abuse of power, which should not happen. We should consciously think not to do it. Then is private gain. When we think of private gain, it is basically monetary gain. So monetary gain, yes, all of us want, but a undue monetary gain should not be delved into. I mean, it's not a coming thing that we have a job, and when we sign up for a job, yes, we do know how much we are going to get paid, but then we start looking for shortcuts. So the shortcuts don't make it happen. That shortcut also is private gain. Or we want to look for a parallel position in another company. So all these are private gains. When we consciously decide to start working at a job place, we need to be truthful, we need to be honest, as we had earlier talked about in previous modules, that what are the true human values, or the basic human values that we need to have to work, to live well, to associate well. Then we talk about breach of trust. Now, if a person hires you, he puts his trust into you. And then in the previous models, we talked about trust as a sole factor. And then we also talked about trust and respect going hand in hand. So when we talked about trust and respect, it is given and taken. If somebody puts their trust in you, you also need to fulfill the term of trust. You also need to fulfill the term of respect with them. Else, that balance is not going to be there. And again, the conscience is going to prick you of whatever breach that you have done, be it of documentation, be it of any valuable information that should not have been shared, be it, for example, a financial balance sheet that should not have gone out, or even a small bit of information like somebody's contact, if it did not have to be shared but you continue to share it. So that, then we have often illegal. Illegal is a very, very broad term, where countries which have forced or a complied legal system like our country, which also gives you the liberty to decide for yourself what you are doing, how you are doing, but then you still decide to do something which is not in compliance with the legal system, then you do get into legal processes. Like in former module, we saw that when you don't fall legally into line, what can happen? You can have penalties, you can have restrictions, or you can have imprisonments also. So these are the consequences of falling out of line, of illegal things that you may delve into doing. So there are dire consequences. We need to think about what is going to happen and then attempt it. Without thinking, we cannot go forward. So these are few enlisted examples of corruption in the workplace. We talk about bribery, we know. We talk about embezzlement. Embezzlement is kind of money laundering. So when we do that at a maximized level, that is unhealthy. That is financially unhealthy, that is mentally unhealthy, that is morally and ethically unhealthy. Not to say that bribery is any less, because when we are into bribery, either taking it or giving it, we need to be mindful that whatever we are doing is not the due course of action. Everything takes time and everything has its own process, like government papers, government recognitions, or permissions, or licenses. Everything has its own time. We cannot just simply go ahead, bribe the person in the chair, or take bribe ourselves and do it. There are so many people who are waiting in line, or there are so many people who are actually following the correct procedure. So decisively, if we think about it, consciously if we think about it, we are doing injustice. Not legal injustice, but yes, injustice to humanity, injustice to ourselves also, when we are involving ourselves in bribery, when we involve ourselves in embezzlement. Kickbacks. Kickbacks also are very, very dangerous. They play heavily on your mind. So we need to not indulge into kickbacks. I mean, kickbacks, people often do it just for gratification. So, gratification when you're harming someone else, that gratification is not good. Is it not unjustified? Very unjustified. Then we talk about nepotism, favoritism. And when we are talking about nepotism, we have heard this terminology happening in, example, the Bollywood, that has been happening. People have been very respectful of certain actors, their children who have indulged into nepotism. So what has happened there is that people or actors, actresses who may have been very good at their work, very good at their skill, but what has happened? That they were sacrificed, or their skill was sacrificed, because the unfair means or the undue advantage that they were extended of because of the connect or whatever you may call it. So favoritism, again the same way, that your skill gets affected, the other person's credibility gets affected. It is not good to cut short another person. The other person may be better skilled than you, and the other person may be in want of something more than you do. So it is not healthy neither for you, neither for the other person. Then we have extortion. Extortion is how, forceful taking away money from somebody. So that is not healthy either. I mean, India is a place where a lot of extortion happens day in out. We read news in the newspaper, we watch news on the television, and there may be live cases happening around us, some at a smaller level, which go unregistered, which go unnoticed, and some at a very large level, which actually happen to make the news. So, extortion, when we hear, how do we feel about it? We don't have a good feeling about it, because what we need to here do is that a person who has undergone this trauma of extortion, we need to empathize. When we empathize with that person, we basically place ourselves in that person's shoes, and we try to analyze what that person must be feeling at that point in time, and how it would be if I were in their shoes. How would I feel? How would I feel disheartened? How would I feel fearful? How would I feel lost? So, extortion, not a good thing. Then we have fraud. We talked that fraud can be of various ways. Fraud can be of papers, fraud can be in finances, and not to say that any kind of fraud is good or legal. Any kind of fraud, whether it is very simple like sharing a number or sharing information, or falsely sharing some data, falsely sharing some information, or tricking somebody, is not a good thing. Think about it, that if a simple fraud of 20 rupees or 30 rupees happens with you, that's your money. Even a 20 rupee gone pinches, doesn't it? Because that 20 rupee could have fetched a small thing, a small pen, a small chocolate. So fraud of a very magnanimous nature can actually be heartbreaking. A person can lose everything. Certain people who are ill on health, certain times have to sacrifice their lives. The health causes the death in certain cases, where people are unable to carry on with the shock that they receive after indulging into a fraud, or after being subjected to a fraud. Then we go on to insider trading. Now, insider trading is like when we, it's kind of a barter system. When we don't happen to work for ourselves, and we try to trade things with our colleagues, with our peers, with our subordinates, with anybody. So that person also has his own KRA, the key responsibility area. So do you also have your KRA. So that insider trading is not a good way. It's basically a fraud that we are doing. It is basically like a breach of trust, that somebody has already laid that trust on you and the other employee when they hired you, but you yet go on to indulging into the breach. And so that is disrespectful to the person who hired you, disrespectful to the person who is doing it. Like suppose it is us. Professionally it is not good, professionally it is very unhealthy. Let's see what conflict of interest has to offer to us. Now we have the basic definition of conflict of interest. A conflict of interest, or the abbreviation COI, occurs when an individual's personal interest, which can include financial, family, friendship, or other relationships, have the potential to influence or appear to influence their professional judgment, decisions, or actions in ways that is not in the best interest of their employer or the entity they represent. So it is quite easy, since it is associated with the previous that we talked about, corruption. It is very close to corruption. So according to its definition, why do we do it? We do it for personal interest. Whose personal interest? It can be a financial interest, any monetary gain that we are having, any interest of the family, a family member getting a job, a family member getting a position, a family member being, not getting transferred, and another person getting transferred instead of the family member. Then we have friendships, as in some friend of yours files a tender for any project or your own company, and you tend to rig the papers and you help the friend getting into the tender or whatever position that the friend may be interested in, or any other relationships. Like we have our loved ones, and it's a very large circle. Anybody, any neighbor staying next to you would want any undue advantage, and you sort of look at it as a favor to them, because you yourself want a favor back from them. So it's kind of a barter system, which may be enticing at times, but then yes, we need to be consciously aware that we do not have to indulge into anything of the kind, because it creates a conflict of interest. Because where you're working, sufficient trust, sufficient care comes attached to the place where you are working, with the responsibility that has been given to you. The second half says that you have the potential to influence or appear to influence the professional judgment, decisions, or actions in a way that is not in the best interest of the employer. So, breach of trust. He has trustworthily given you the position, he has entitled some responsibility to you, and there are powers which come associated with it. So, it is basically abuse of power, also, if you think of it on a broad term. So, what are the key characteristics of a COI, a conflict of interest? Potential versus actual. So, a conflict of interest can exist even if no actual wrongdoing has occurred. It's about the opportunity for personal interest to sway professional duty. So, if I am not interested in working, I may get swayed by any small incentive that somebody is offering, or even if not a benefit of finance, it can be a benefit of a leverage of time, supposedly, a leverage of any other factor, a leverage to use any other power, like that. Bias. The core issue is the potential for bias in decision making. Why, when we come to think about it, like we talked about in the previous slide, that if there is a tender being released from a company, and there are supposedly two or three people who fill the tender, one of them being your friend or your family member, but that person qualifies to fill the tender and manages to get the tender because you are in the system. okay, because you have divulged information of the company to them, irrespective of the fact that that person that you shared the information with was capable, was skilled enough to get the tender, or holds credibility to complete the tender. Disclosure is the key. Often, simply disclosing a conflict of interest and recursing oneself from relevant decisions is enough to manage it ethically. So, we do not need to divulge into information which we feel important, which is important to the company, which is not ethically correct with the company. Because an amount of trust you are carrying, we need to keep remembering that. Not always illegal. Having a conflict of interest isn't necessarily illegal. Why? Because it may not be legally binding, but yes, it will be morally or ethically binding. But failing to disclose or manage it, especially when it leads to unfair advantage or harm, can be. So, when we talked about bias, it goes along with it. So, when you give a tender to an undeserving person, or a undeserving person gets a contract who is unable to fulfill it according to the standard operating procedures that we know, so it becomes difficult. Why? Because that person becomes answerable, and more than that person to whom you have given that benefit, you are answerable because the power was in your hands, the decision was in your hands, the responsibility, the trust was in your hands. Now, a quick look at examples of conflict of interest in the workplace. Financial interest. I need not detail that. We already know what benefits, monetary benefits we can get. Family relationships. Again, the factor of nepotism or favoritism comes into play, which we've already done. Romantic relationships, because see, we please a loved one in any kind of a situation. Why? Because we are seeking some kind of a favor, or we are seeking some kind of an appreciation or connect therein. So that outside employment, when we help yet another company, yet another competitor who is helping us, monetarily helping us, or in kind helping us, or maybe our loved one or any family or friend happens to be working there. Gifts and hospitality, that if it is not monetary, then it is in kind. We look forward to festivities, we look forward to festival gifts, we are looking at a paid holiday, we are looking at a paid stay. Who doesn't want that? We do all want that, but then everything that we do under the garb of gifts and hospitality is not correct and is not, certainly not justified. We need to think about that. Board membership, when we want something, a chair where we which we do not deserve, what we cannot manage, or where we ideally cannot normally reach, we do it through them, we do it in compliance with them, and we try to achieve something with a shortcut. Now in life or in professionalism, nothing is a shortcut if it is not ethically correct. We have to be ethically correct. Our moral compass has to be in place. Let's talk about workplace responsibility. The definition of workplace responsibility, it refers to the duties, obligations, and accountabilities that employees and employers have towards each other, the organization, clients, stakeholders, and the wider community. So it is basically encompassing everything that is associated with you, has a connect with you. Why? Because you have a duty. More than a duty, you have an obligation, because when you joined, you were told what you are supposed to do, how you are supposed to do. Accountability, what you are to do has its accountability, has its answerability to the employer who has employed you. So when you are doing a certain work, that is your key responsibility area, you will have a scale which measures how you are doing, what is the quality of the work that you are doing, what is the consequence, what is the outcome, is it profitable or not. It encompasses performing assigned tasks, adhering to policies, acting ethically, and contributing to a safe and productive work environment. So, when we are working for an organization, everything comes to a play. This is basically a group target. A single person cannot run a company. A single person cannot seek profits. A single person cannot make the company progress. So it is a group work, not an individual approach. So when it is a group work, we have to follow by example. It has to be experiential working. So we need to stick to policies. If we do not stick to policies, people who are working under us will not take a good example from us. Acting ethically, again, it is if you are leading a team, if you do not act ethically, you cannot impose ethics onto your team members. Contributing to a safe and productive work environment, you can only begin with a small circle, that is yourself, and as the circle keeps expanding, all your colleagues keep including into that circle. So you need to do it for yourself first and for the people and the environment that you're working in. So it is in totality that you have to be responsible for what you're doing. So the key aspects of workplace responsibility: performing job duties diligently and competently. Diligently, you have a conscience which is going to guide you on what you're doing is correct or not. Competently, because the company has to progress. You have to progress. You, if an individual doesn't progress, if your team doesn't progress, how is the company going to progress? And if the company is not going to progress, how will you get your satisfaction? You cannot. Adhering to the policies, keeping in line with the framework. There is always a framework where we work, so we need to fit into the framework. Like squares fit into squares, circles fit into circles. So we need to fit into that particular framework. Ethical conduct, we know what we are doing is correct. Otherwise, every company has its own standard of ethics where you are asked not to indulge into doing so many things that you shouldn't be doing. Accountability, the answerability. When we are given responsibility, we know at the end of the day that we are answerable for whatever right or wrong happens on the chair, because the chair is the factor where you decide what is going to happen for yourself, for the company, for your colleagues, for people working under you. Teamwork and collaboration, we cannot again work as an individual. We need to take everybody along and think about ourselves as a part of the unit and work hand in hand. Resource management, when we work for larger companies, there are so many things which are at our disposal. We need to be morally aligned so that we are using those resources very mindfully, and we are not just working on pilferaging. If we know pilferage is misuse of things, or if we are not paying for it, it is just like throwing something away if we have not paid for it. So that is wrong also. Then we talk about confidentiality that comes attached to the responsibility that we have, that comes attached to the accountability that we have, that we need to process information which is sacred to us, which is sacred to the company for the benefit of the company. Reporting misconduct. There are so many acts of misconduct which go unreported. Sometimes we feel that they are not important, though they are important for the mental health of maybe somebody smaller. Maybe a small incident, but can play drastically on the mental health of your team member. It can drastically play on the mind of yourself also. And when you think that the mental health is challenged or it is not correct, then your productivity also gets affected. Promoting safety and well-being, it is not only for others, it is for ourselves also, for a healthy living. If we do not promote safety, then it is questionable to us also. We are putting ourselves also in danger. So putting ourselves into danger is not a very wise thing to do. Well-being, whereas, is a very wise thing to be taken care of, not only yourselves but people around you. With that, we finish the lesson. And in the lesson, I'm sure you have seen how corruption, how conflict of interest, how workplace responsibility, when worked together and we know what we have to do is right and what we don't have to do is wrong, then we are at peace with ourselves. We are at peace with the workplace. Why? Because the workplace does well, we do well. We feel better, the workplace automatically treats us better. We build trust, the workplace gives us more trust. So it is a hand and glove combination that we have. Thank you.